Something arrived that you'd been wanting. Maybe something small, maybe something you'd been carrying quietly in the back of your mind for weeks, turning it over without quite noticing. And when it came, the feeling was thinner than expected, quieter than disappointment, and harder to name. Like arriving somewhere you'd imagined many times and finding the place slightly less vivid than the imagining had been. The object was there. Nothing went wrong. But where satisfaction should have been, there was an empty space instead. And the strange part was that there wasn't much to say about it. It arrived. It was fine. And then the wanting started quietly organizing itself around something else. You might have told yourself you weren't present enough to receive it properly, that you'd been too distracted, too rushed. So you tried to be more grateful, more attentive, more in the moment. And the trying had a familiar texture to it, the same slight reaching, the same leaning into a moment you were technically already inside. This flatness, that specific flatness when a wanted thing arrives and doesn't deliver what the wanting promised. Most people move past it quickly. It feels like a personal failure, a sign that something's wrong with how you receive things. So the list gets adjusted. Another thing gets found. The machinery keeps running. What Anandamayi Ma noticed is that this flatness is a signal, not a failure. What usually happens next is subtle enough to miss. The flatness gets diagnosed as a quality problem. Not enough presence, not enough depth of wanting. And so the wanting gets refined. It learns better objects to pursue, things with more permanence, more meaning. Spirituality often arrives here as an upgrade to the list, rather than a departure from it. You start wanting peace the way you used to want recognition, stillness the way you used to want comfort. The longing borrows better vocabulary, but underneath the words, the movement is the same. That slight lean into the next moment. That feeling that what you're after is still just slightly ahead. What I've noticed is that the spiritual version of wanting has the same handwriting as the ordinary version, the same urgency wearing quieter clothes, the same interior performance of sincerity. I can feel when I've moved from one register to the other, and often the only difference is the name I've given to the reaching. There's a state that comes before the loosening, though, one that's harder to romanticize. It's not yet the indifference Anandamayi Ma describes, that clean savorlessness. It's something more restless, a hunger that keeps returning to familiar places and finding them slightly less nourishing than last time. The same conversations and pleasures, the same internal experiences that once carried some quality of aliveness, still available, but without the old weight to them. And the strange thing about this hunger is that it doesn't know what it wants. It only knows what it's tried. Most spiritual frameworks treat this as a problem to be solved, a deficiency somewhere in the practice, in the quality of attention, in the level of commitment to the path. So the prescription is always more sitting, more sincerity, more letting go. But it may be something else entirely. It may be the first signal that something in you has already begun to register a different quality, not yet tasted, but sensed, the way you might sense a change in weather before the sky has changed at all. Anandamayi Ma's teaching is easy to mishear. She's often taken to mean renounce the world, pursue the divine, but she was specific. She said it is not necessary to eschew anything, any pleasures of this world. Only try to establish contact and hold on to the other dimension. Whatever is redundant will fall off of its own accord. She's pointing at what happens to things when something else becomes more present. They loosen without you pulling at them. There's a story about Paramahansa Yogananda that lands close to this. A man who drank, smoked, and had affairs wanted to join the meditations. He wasn't going to stop any of it. Yogananda told him that was fine. After some time, the man didn't want the vices anymore. He wanted the meditation. He hadn't wrestled with anything. He'd gotten close to something, and proximity did what discipline hadn't. He never aimed at the letting go. It arrived as a byproduct of getting close to something. And what stays with me in that story is how completely it inverts the usual logic. We assume change comes through effort applied to the thing we want to change. The man assumed that too. He was wrong, and he was never corrected. Yogananda just said, "Come," and something else took care of the rest. She goes further with this than it first appears. She said, divine happiness, even the tiniest particle of it, never leaves one again. And you'll hunger for it, and you'll realize that nothing transient can appease this hunger, something that stays even in glimpse form, and a hunger that ordinary things can no longer feed. She's describing a shift in the tasting mechanism itself. The world hasn't changed. Something in how you're receiving it has. That shift didn't come from trying harder. It came from proximity to something with a different quality. She also says this: when it is found, nothing else remains to be found. The sense of want will not awaken anymore. The engine goes quiet. The want doesn't get redirected or rechanneled. It just stops waking up. She's describing the end of the structure that made wanting feel necessary in the first place. That's different from contentment. Contentment is still a state someone is in. This is the dissolution of whoever was measuring the states. Is there a moment somewhere in your own experience where the flatness was so complete it stopped feeling like disappointment? Where it felt strangely more like clarity? You can't manufacture the savorlessness. Deciding that things will taste flat doesn't work, and pursuing the loosening of the grip runs into an immediate problem. The gesture of pursuing it is itself the grip. Even approaching contact with something truer, the way you approach everything else you want, keeps you inside the same movement, because the wanting is precisely the movement you're trying to see through. The tool can't dismantle itself, or at least, it can't do it on purpose. What that leaves is a strange suspension. The usual strategies have already been tried or imagined. More effort or less. More structure or more surrender. And underneath all of it, there's still the same engine running, expecting something from the next moment that this moment isn't delivering. There's something particular about being in that suspension honestly, without resolving it into a new practice, without making the suspension itself into a quiet spiritual achievement. The mind wants to do something with it. Name it as progress. Frame it as a threshold. So even the stillness keeps getting interrupted by the very movement it's pointing at, which is either the cruelest joke in contemplative experience or the most accurate description of where most practitioners actually live most of the time. What I haven't figured out yet is what you do with that. There's no instruction that fits it cleanly. It just sits there. The way savorlessness sits there. Not quite a problem, not quite a solution, just a changed quality in the air of experience. Come back to where this started. Something arrived that you wanted, and it was flat. Maybe you moved past it, or maybe at some point you stayed long enough to notice it wasn't failure, that something in you had simply stopped being persuaded by that particular thing, with no decision made, no discipline applied. Through something that had shifted on its own, quietly, while attention was elsewhere. That movement is what Anandamayi Ma was pointing at. The world doesn't lose its taste because you willed it to. It loses its taste when you've been close to something that doesn't fade. You know it only by what it leaves behind, the spaces where the old appetite used to be, and the strange quality those spaces have now. What's still moving in you after sitting with this? And is that movement familiar? If you want to keep sitting with these questions, there's more here when you're ready.